I saw a thread recently, and it's not really a new post. It's over 3 months old at this point, and I'm not discussing it because I want to drag anyone under the bus. In fact, I'm going to make sure that I blot out the name and picture, but I did want to talk about it because I feel like it speaks to a lot of the ways that hustle and work culture online really kind of send us these messages about ourselves and about work and about rest. And I wanted to take a minute and go through my thoughts relating to this post and sort of give you another perspective that you can think about when you're seeing posts or videos or whatever like this. Let's hop to it. Okay, first of all, let's put the post up on the screen. Boop. And in case you couldn't tell from that first line, I am one of the certain people who object to this post. I'm not saying that it's bad to work hard, but I do think that a lot of what he says in this post is problematic, and also some of it is just straight up wrong. So let's start with the first problem with this post, and it's this. Okay, let me pull it up and read it. You don't need a weekend. The concept is barely 100 years old. It's a modern invention. Okay, I'm going to stop there. What this person is saying is technically true. Weekends are a product of our modern industrial age. However, this person is obviously forgetting or has never heard of the ancient concept of the Jewish Shabbat, which is a rest from all work once a week. It's not a 2-day weekend, but it is a complete resting from work. And it is a spiritual practice in nature, right? Because it makes no sense from the perspective of getting things done and productivity to rest from all of your work. But it is a practice that Judaism has upheld since its earliest days, and that Jews and Christians to this day, to differing extents based on, how you practice your faith, still practice. And so it's sort of interesting to say that it's a modern concept when actually it's one of the oldest concepts in one of the oldest religions in the world. Okay, so that's my first thing. And then the second thing is that, yes, weekends are a modern concept because we live in modern times, right? We have Shabbat, we have Sabbath, and for many centuries, that is what people practiced. But then you get into the modern age and suddenly we have this 2-day weekend, and a lot of that is because of how we work now. Our work and our lives are not as intertwined as they were with, our community and with the weather and the seasons. And so we require time that is not quote unquote working time in order to get other things done or see people outside of work. I'm going to just read an excerpt from Oliver Burkeman's book, 4,000 Weeks, because I feel like he explains this better than I can. But basically, before the Industrial Revolution, you didn't have a need for a weekend as much because of the way that work and life were structured and interwoven together. Let's read that. Okay, so this is page 142. Enjoying leisure for its own sake, which you might have assumed was the whole point of leisure, comes to feel as though it's somehow not quite enough. It begins to feel as though you're failing at life in some indistinct way if you're not treating your time off as an investment in your future. Sometimes this pressure takes the form of the explicit argument that you ought to think of your leisure hours as an opportunity to become a better worker. Okay, and then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We probably can't hope to grasp how utterly alien this attitude toward leisure would have seemed to anyone living at any point before the Industrial Revolution. To the philosophers of the ancient world, leisure wasn't the means to some other end. On the contrary, it was the end to which everything else worth the doing was a means. Aristotle argued that true leisure, by which he meant self-reflection and philosophical contemplation, was among the very highest of virtues because it was worth choosing for its own sake, whereas other virtues, like courage in war or noble behavior in government, were virtuous only because they led to something else. This same essential idea remained intact across centuries of subsequent historical upheaval, that leisure was life's center of gravity, the default state to which work was a sometimes inevitable interruption. Even the onerous lives of medieval English peasants were suffused with leisure. They unfolded according to a calendar that was dominated by religious holidays and saints' days, along with multi-day village festivals known as ales, to mark momentous occasions such as marriages and deaths, or less momentous ones like the annual lambing, the season when ewes gave birth, any excuse to get drunk. Some historians claim that the average country dweller in the 16th century would have worked for only about 150 days each year, and while those figures are disputed, nobody doubts that leisure lay near the heart of almost every life. Apart from anything else, while all that recreation might have been fun, it wasn't exactly optional. People faced strong social pressure not to work all the time. You observed religious holidays because the church required it, and in a close-knit village, it wouldn't have been easy to shirk the other festivities either. Another result was that a sense of leisureliness seeped into the crevices of the days people did spend at work. So basically the point of what Oliver Workman is saying here is that before the Industrial Revolution, which is when this person is basically claiming that the weekend started, well, the work week looked a lot different than it does now. And so implying that weekends are like a new concept that people just invented, that's not really true. My best guess is that weekends exist because people realized when they started working in factories and working very long shifts that they needed rest, that they needed a break. And if you're at a point in your life where you don't feel like you need a break on the weekend and you want to do something, that's fine. Like if you want to work on the weekend in order to get ahead or start a side hustle or whatever, like I'm not here to shame or condemn that, but I am here to say that you need to understand that those leisure hours that you have, those truly leisure hours on your weekend, are not your employers to deal with. Okay? We'll get back to that thought in a minute, but I want to move on to the next problem. Okay. The conclusion of the thread. What you really need is work you don't need a weekend from. You'd be amazed how much faster you get to your goals. Again, this may be true. You may take the weekend and work on a goal and make a lot more progress. That's certainly possible. I have done things like that before. But here's the problem with the way that that's being communicated. There's a strong implication here that liking your job will solve your problems. If you just find the job that you really, really want to have, you won't care if you have to work weekends because it is your dream job and it will fill you with joy every day of your life. And people get away with saying things like this because most of us don't like our jobs. So we imagine, like in a world where we liked our jobs, that we would like want to work weekends and just work as hard as we could, or, you know, do all the hustle things. And then conversely, if we start a side project that we say or think that we love, and then we aren't motivated to work on it in our off hours, we think that it must be because we don't love it enough. Well, I mean, I have always liked my jobs. I've always loved my jobs. And I'm just here to tell you that it's not just the type of work that you do. It's also the environment in which you do it. It is the pace at which you have to do it. And it's also your needs as an individual. You may still need time to rest, even if you love your job. And so finding a job that you love is not going to solve all of your problems. This is because your job isn't your life. I know that sounds crazy because when you listen to productivity or like entrepreneurship gurus, they really make it sound like it is. And for some of them it is. But for most of us, like, I don't want to call us normal people because I don't know how many people are like actually normal. But for most of us, we want to have a life that is not 100% work. And so if you want to have that sort of life where you're able to invest in relationships and your family and your marriage, or, you know, even if you just want to enjoy time to yourself and hobbies and things like that, that's wonderful. Like for most of us, a job is a huge part of our lives. And so if you have a job that you enjoy, that's great because you're spending, 8 hours a day at it. But it's not your whole life. And so having a job that you like or having a job that you love is still not going to solve all your problems because, first of all, no job is perfect. And second of all, it's not your whole life. Finally, and I will say this because there are people who say like, no, that's fine. I love my job. I could work at it 20 hours a day, and I do. And I work at it 7 days a week and blah, blah, blah. That is a choice and that is fine. But different people have different needs. Some people can work that schedule and it seems fine. You look at them and you go, oh, they don't seem like they're really suffering in any way. This is what they love. They would rather be doing that than really anything else in their life. And that's great. That is a certain type of person that I would say is probably the minority. And I also think that, well, I'm just kind of skeptical, right? Like, I feel like that is sort of the archetype that's put forth as like the successful founder or the successful like business person. And I just sort of wonder how many of those people are actually built that way, or if they just talk like that online because they want to be seen as successful. I'm not sure. But anyway, cynicism aside, if you truly feel like you are somebody who is built for that, you're very in touch with who you are, and it doesn't stress you out, it exhilarates you, you don't have anything else in your life that you wish you could be spending more time on that is, as important or more important than your work, then like that's great. But it still doesn't solve all your problems, because chances are you need a team to do that work that you're working on. And if you are always on and pushing and pushing and pushing 24/7, that is going to mean that your high performers, your high achievers feel the need to follow suit. And when they follow suit, you are potentially setting them up for burnout, because if they are not built like you, if they don't have the same capacity for work and the same like particular level of dedication, and also particular level of like not needing to be as present in other areas of their lives, they're not going to be able to keep up. And that is a recipe for burnout. So you will burn through people very quickly, which takes a lot of time and ultimately wastes a lot of your progress. I think that if you are somebody who goes and goes and goes and goes and goes all the time, it would be wise, I think, to limit your communication with your team to regular working hours so that they don't get that impression or feel that pressure to be always interacting with you, always in their inbox or Slack or however it is that you communicate, because otherwise, like, you are going to burn people out. Okay, the third problem with this thread that I do wanted to address is that there's a very heavy implication in a lot of what's written about like work and productivity and entrepreneurship and all of those things online, that obsession is the only way to win. And this is quite cheeky of me to sit here on my YouTube channel with like, I don't know, 1 follower and say this, but that is not the only way to win. And I truly believe that. The person whose like little thread I'm using as an example here, they obviously derive a lot of joy from working. You can tell that just from this message, but if you're familiar with their platform as well, like I am, they derive a lot of joy from working. Their whole platform is on business building and entrepreneurship and all of those things. They're obviously very, very committed to what they do and obsessed with it. But the thing is, I don't think you have to have that same level of obsession to be successful. You can define the rules of your own game. Like, this is your life. So success can look different for you than it does for other people. It doesn't have to be like always making a lot of money. It can be making enough money to live the kind of life that you want to live. One of the things for me is that as I'm trying to build a business, I want to make sure that I give myself time to be thoughtful about it, that I'm not like rushing ahead. And so for me, that means I need to have scheduled time off, like weekends. I need to schedule in time to think. And I also need to schedule in time where I can just let my mind wander. Being thoughtful and creative takes a lot of time. And you don't necessarily have that time when you are running 24/7. And the other thing is that like not everyone needs or wants to be hustling or side hustling 24/7. If you make enough money at your job, or you prefer to have a little bit less money and more leisure time, that is a choice that you 100% can make. Like, that's the beauty of living in the world and the society that we do, is that you get to choose what's most important to you. And if working and money is not the most important thing to you, if that's something that you need in order to survive, in order to get to a certain level of comfort, and then you're good, that is fine. And that is a beautiful and perfectly valid way to live. And so if somebody's saying like, hey, your weekends, if you take those off, if you say you need those off, that's wasted time. No, it's not. It's just wasted time because you have a specific definition of what a good way to spend your time is, and it involves only working. Many of us have a definition that's different, and that's great. And then the fourth problem, this is one we've talked about a lot on this channel, but it's just a good reminder because it's still something that I struggle with. But there is sort of online, and I keep saying online, but it's not just online. It's also in real life. Like the things that people say and talk about online are a reflection of like actual culture that's happening in real life. But the problem here is that underneath these words, there's a subtle message that your value as a human being is based on what you're able to produce. And so if you're the type of human being who takes those extra hours on your weekends and produces something else, then that's good. That's somehow more virtuous than being the kind of human who takes those extra hours on weekends and uses them in a way that makes them happy or in a way that helps them rest. It's not more honorable or respectable to work on the weekend or not work on the weekend. If it is your choice, then it's your choice. And there's not a more virtuous way to use that time. Even if we don't talk about weekends, if we just back up and talk about work a little bit, you could contribute zero, absolutely zero, to anyone's bottom line. And you still have value as a human being. You still are worthy of love and dignity. And that's a really hard one for me because I always feel like I need to earn people's love. I feel like I need to earn everyone's love, God's love, people's love, but you don't have to. And so this intense pressure that we feel to make something of ourselves, to make ourselves valuable, to make ourselves useful, to use every extra hour we have towards some sort of productive end, that's just not necessary. And if that's what's fueling our activity, it's probably a good time to take a step back and not say, oh, like I want to spend some time off this weekend, but like, no, you actually do need the weekend at that point because you need to learn that when you're old or if you get injured and you can't do the things that you were able to do to make money or be productive in some way, it's okay. Like your worth doesn't come from that. Your worth comes from the fact that you exist. Okay, so this video is long enough, but I did want to leave you with just one more thought here. And it's that this line of thinking about like using your weekends for goals or your extra hours as much as you can. Whenever you see something like this or hear something like this, I just want to keep this in the back of your mind. And it's the question, who does this benefit? Because at the end of the day, you thinking that you need to utilize every single hour that you have for some sort of productive work, that benefits business owners. And now you may be a business owner, and so it may directly benefit you. But that mindset benefits the people who own businesses and need workers who are busy and want to make themselves useful all of the time. And there is nothing wrong with being a hard worker. I've said that before. I said that at the beginning of this video. I will say it 1,000 times because I like being a hard worker, and I think that that is a really good thing. But there's a difference between hard work and workaholism is not a virtue. It is something that benefits people who want industrious workers, though. When you encounter stuff like this, you do just need to ask yourself, okay, who does this message benefit? Is it going to benefit me as a worker, or is it going to benefit like a corporation? I don't have any problem with people who give this kind of advice. That is sometimes what you need to do to get to the top, if that's your definition of success. And for a lot of these people, I think that that is how they remember themselves getting to where they are. And it could be 100% true. But you also need to realize that hugely benefits them if they employ other people for that to be the story that they're telling. I'm not saying that anyone online is like lying intentionally about how they got to where they are. And probably most of what they're saying is closer to the truth than I would like for it to be. But if you own a business, it benefits you to encourage workaholism and overwork because those kinds of employees get a lot of things done. So just think about that when you are hearing advice like this online from like entrepreneur bros and finance bros and, side hustle bros and whatever other bros are out there on the internet these days. Hard work is good. Workaholism is not. So if you want your weekend, take it without any guilt or any shame because you have worked hard. Even if you hadn't, you are still worthy of rest. So enjoy your weekend. Don't let the powers that be try to take it from you. See you next week.